so inconsistent?
Construction's hard.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Construction is Hard podcast. I'm Brian. To my left is the wise sage, Gary. We're here to talk about workforce management and other just different topics in construction. Now, today, for those of you that have been watching, let's start with this. We've been talking in this first season, Gary and I's first debut, if you will, of this crazy shit we've been doing. This first season has been all about workforce management. We started the whole process off with defining and talking about the gap and kind of how to sense or sniff out where this workforce management category really sits in your business. We went into a lot of what groups are doing today, talking about the spreadsheet hell and the job boards and just the fragmentation, siloedness, yada, 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 of where we are today. From there, we actually broke down the way that Gary and I have seen workforce management operate in these companies across the U.S. and across the globe, actually. We broke them into our 6 categories or our 6 trusses, or we've even called them pillars, from the forecast to roster to schedule to communications to information and to productivity. Now, at this point, we are wrapping up season 1. This is the beginning of us trying to land this crazy plane. Today, we have been referencing discipline. You've heard Gary talk about it multiple times throughout these different sessions. And today we're really honing in on discipline in these processes. What does a process really look like? When we reference discipline, it's, you said it well, it's not about taking people out behind the woodshed. It's more, do we all know what the true level of detail is to have an actual process and a process that then we can all hold ourselves accountable to? And what does that really take?
Right, consistency. Right, do we do this process consistently on every project? Combining all the processes together then brings it together and makes it the model to actually execute on every project. Everything's consistent.
Baseline recipes for success. We've talked about our 6 categories. We know that scheduling and forecasting and our roster or our people, we know those things are constant. We know communications are important, yada, yada, yada. What we're really talking about here today, and some of the stuff that Gary's going to share, is not what you would normally anticipate when you think of workforce management. It's not scheduling people from job A to job B. It's not forecasting job C. These are actually processes that these workforce management tools can help us gain visibility and thus can help us establish processes, have sustainable trainings, and get some consistency in. Now, every job is different. We get it. We've been there, right? Every construction project is different. Each team is different. The conditions change. The players change. But what we're going to identify today is there are workflows that are still more consistent across every project, every job. And if we have that checklist, and that checklist is a bunch of processes across the business, this workforce management tool and this workforce management practice rolls them all up. And we're going to talk today about really how you can visualize these processes and then how you can have consistency and discipline from job to job to job, and what some of the effects are.
Well, Toby Mitchell, he will tell you that he consults with companies and they're asking him, what technologies do I need? What do I need? What do I need? Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to get your house in order. If you don't have processes in place, consistent, and have your methodologies consistent across every project, what ends up happening is no matter what technology you put in place, it's secondary to what your true problem is. And he'll tell contractors that, get your house in order first. And what does that mean? You know, like you alluded to, bringing discipline to your company, but that doesn't mean taking the guy out behind the woodshed and scolding him for things that he's not doing within the company standards, right? Well, what are the company standards? And have you, as the management team, establish these and educate your people on what these standards are and how to execute. And then once you establish them, you have to enforce them. You cannot allow people to freelance. There are certain areas they have to stay between the boundaries on certain things in order for your company to improve. And that really is the crux of a lot of contractors' problems is I don't know if you want to go into these processes right now or not.
I want real quick, and I'm going to ask our awesome team behind the scenes to help Gary and I. There's a graphic that we've got that leverages a great tool out there, but it's just a way to build and show a literal documented workflow. And we'll have one of those popping up somewhere on the screen here while we're talking.
Yeah.
But you can visualize what people are doing, what actions or events, how should those actions and events be conducted, task, condition, standard, styles. And then finally, what tool or method are they using to do that? You've heard us talk about PPT, people, process, technology. The idea, what we're showing or what we're going to show on the screen here is imagine a workflow for those of you listening in from left to right, and I can see from step one what person in my organization may or should be doing this step. What are the details of the event or their action that they're doing? And then what are the tools or the methods that they have to achieve that? Easy one to think about is actually, maybe we'll show this workflow, identifying requests or identifying needs on existing projects. This is just one little workflow that falls under one of our categories in workforce management. But you can imagine as you go left to right in that actual workflow, I can see foremen are supposed to identify the number, classification, certifications, needs of the people that are supposed to be on this job. And they're going to use today phones, text messages, in-person meetings, post-it notes on the job boards, you name it, right? That's fragmented. That's all over the place. There's no discipline. And at the same time, when we say, why don't you do better? Why is the labor coordinator struggling to find all of these things? Well, look, they're trying to react to 8 or 6 different methods that they're receiving this information. They're trying to crunch it down. It's hard to tell those people you're doing it wrong when we don't give them the training and the tool and we don't identify to everybody. We don't share with them, here is what right looks like, and here's the tools that are going to allow you to do this better. I want to get that out there because I think that's a key piece of just really how we visualize these workflows. And when we talk about this stuff, we talk to a lot of groups that go, yeah, we know prefab is important. We know the detailing team is valuable. But when we ask, how do you really go about planning and allocating them, then there is this disconnect. And it's just because we don't have a place that we can visualize it. We're going to hope to help with that today.
You know, how many times you hear, you go to peer group meetings, you really should have a turnover meeting. They're really important. Then have a kickoff meeting. They're different. Then as you're starting to ramp this job up, there's steps in between all the way up to the post-job debriefing. And you'll hear from consultants, you'll hear from, your peers, this is really a good idea. Well, yeah. And if you're watching this or if you're listening to this, you're probably rolling your eyes right now because you're going to hear it again. Right? But there's a difference to actually executing and bringing discipline to it than saying, that we got to do this. How many times I call them sparklers, come back from a peer group meeting, you're all fired up. Okay, we're going to start doing turnover meetings on every job. Okay, good idea. We should do that. And then the management team doesn't pay close enough attention to it. It's come down from Mount High. We are going to have turnover meetings on every job. And we do for about 2 months. And then a job comes along and project manager got away with not having one. Oh, that wasn't so bad. Then the next one comes along and different project manager decides that, well, Bob got away with it. He doesn't have one. And then after about 6 months, the whole initiative falls apart. So when I talk about sparklers, there's an example of a sparkler. Let's light this thing. This is a really good idea. And it starts to burn, and it burns hot. And one day it goes out. And in the meantime, we had another really bright idea, and we lit that sparkler.
Why did it go out?
Because the management team did not bring enough discipline to it to ensure that it wouldn't. Okay? Now, there's a difference between education and training too. It needs to be noted here. What are we doing? Are we educating our people, or are we training them? I can train a dog. A dog has no idea why he has to sit to get a biscuit, but he does because I've trained him to do so. But educating people is an entirely different process, right? So if the project manager now understands truly the importance and the depth of these turnover meetings, he's educated, right? And he sees the value in it. And if there's no value in whatever we do, it's going to go out. All right. Now, turnover meetings, there's a high degree of value in those, right? But if we don't enforce this and change our habits and bring this into our company culture, it becomes an issue. We are spinning our wheels. All right. Now, I can name 20 of those processes that this whole analogy applies to, right? And imagine, why are we so messed up, right? Why can't we get things rolling the way they should? And a lot of it is the management team, the executive team has to look themselves in the mirror and say, hey, this problem starts with me. It's not the project manager. It's not the foreman. It's the culture within the company and the processes that are expected to take place within the company.
That's a couple things there. The culture piece. Our friend Toby, he was on a previous episode. Some of you from the past may remember Toby. Toby, we miss you. Hope to see you again here soon. And we actually will be seeing him again. He's written an awesome article that we're going to cover in a future episode. But Toby nails it, puts it right there with start with the culture. Does it start with me? It's not putting a tool in place saying it doesn't work. It's not saying, my people just won't do this. Why not? Take them behind the woodshed, rah, rah, rah. It starts with what is the culture and do we have the buy-in? Do we start with the why? You talked education. I think of that as the best groups that we have seen roll this out and create operational, fundamental, sustainable, and effective change in workforce management. They start by leading with the why. They start by helping convey the vision to everybody. It's not just, hey, you got to do it this way because I said so, right? But what we're going for is we tell people first what is the vision, right? And we tell them first why we are asking for this. Hey, the organization has all acknowledged that we are struggling to get enough people at the right jobs at the right time. Well, great. How are we going to combat that? If we are all planning and forecasting in one place, we'll have the ability to identify when we have those shortages or surpluses and level them out. If we start leading with that, hey, project managers, foremen, superintendents, if you do this way with this tool, and it should make your life easier, but also if you do it this way, it will help us as an organization make sure you have the people you need when you need them. So now at least I'm aware of what I'm contributing to or why I am being asked to change. We talked about earlier, I'm not being asked, should we change? Because that's not, that burden of decision should not go on me. That is a company leadership decision. But I am now aware of why I'm being asked to change and why it should help everybody and why it helps the team.
And that's the difference between education and training.
Yeah.
If you can educate your project managers to be a foreman, and you can educate your foreman to be project managers, they're speaking the same language. They understand each other's pain. That's a pretty powerful tool. So educating field people in project management techniques and why certain things have to happen on the project management side only betters your company, right? And same the other way around, where in a lot of companies there's a wall between those two. And that's a wall really that needs to be broken down and improved upon.
Real kind of kicker to wrap this up as we get into this is we are talking about starting with the processes, understanding how specific and how detailed those really need to be in order for us to be able to truly train and then hold ourselves accountable to them down the road. So it starts with the processes. That leads into a platform or a tool that is fit to support or enable those processes. And that equates to now the ability to have sustainable training and discipline. We're not talking about the magic list here. We're not talking about some do it this way, always have a kickoff meeting, always do this, and you're going to magically be successful. We understand that's ridiculous. That's not what we're advocating for. We're advocating for getting the teams aware of what's going on, how we have an opportunity to do it better, and then being able to know what right looks like across each job so that we can have more sustainable success across each job.
Okay. Right. Exactly. I'm going to pick on the detailing team for a minute.
Let's do it.
Because I think this is a good example. There's a couple of them are good examples. These processes I'm talking about, that when you start thinking about workforce management, this isn't something that just pops right into everyone's mind, but it's something that can happen when you implement these tools. The detailing team, there are contractors out there that this whole process with 3D CAD now and BIM technologies is driving them nuts. The general contractors of the world, a lot of them are trying to dump a lot of that responsibility onto the subcontractors. In the electrical industry in particular, it's probably the worst because there's nothing laid out on an electrical drawing. It's all representational. Where in other trades, there's usually a isometric drawing and 3D, or in some cases now 3D drawings of how the mechanical systems go together, and then the field measurements basically have all been taken care of because they're all within this model. And the poor electricians now have to design their systems around everything else that's in their way, right? Well, if you present this to the detailing team, okay, we have to have a layout. We need this information to go out to the field, and it has to be right. And let's get it laid out, because we know that by laying the project out with a computer, whether it be 2D, 3D, fully blown BIM, whatever the case might be, is critical. We know that. A lot of times what's happening here is that we assign a detailer to a project and just pretty much let him go. This job has to be laid out. What's the difference what tool we use? And so now we have this detailer who's an expensive individual, pretty much with a green light to do whatever he or she wants to throughout the course of the project. And at the end of the project, you're looking at the budget or the amount of money spent on these detailers and trying to tie that back into justifying why we spent so much money on the detailing aspect. Some would argue that we're going to do that anyway, and that's just the cost of doing the electrical work, right? We just used a better tool. I submit that that's flawed, because these tools are in place to make you more efficient. That doesn't give you carte blanche to just run wild on a project and spend money that wasn't really budgeted for. All the layout on these projects is figured into the unit price or unit cost of installation. All right. So first of all, what are we doing? We have to establish the expectation. And if we don't do that, which in a lot of cases we don't, what are you doing? Pencil CAD? Are we doing 2D CAD? Are we doing somewhat of a coordinated 3D drawing with other trades? Are we doing full-blown BIM? What is it? What's our level of detail? And each level of detail, as you go up, gets more expensive because it takes more time, right? Okay, so if we don't establish the level of expectation, we're never going to come in within budget. Now, once we do that, and everyone knows on the project team, okay, we're doing 3D coordinated drawings. All right, everybody knows what that is. The project manager knows what to expect. The field guys know what to expect. The detailer knows what is expected of him, right? All right, now we know we can establish a budget. Once we establish a budget, we can establish a timeline. Now we know you're going to start and you're going to finish within 3 months. This is a, say, 16-month job. We've just brought the detailing in within budget because we brought discipline to that process. That's what it is. That's when I'm talking about discipline, that's what I'm talking about, is bringing a process under control and enforcing it from project to project to project.
And you have a place with a workforce management tool. There is a place where you can ultimately look to see and make sure that something is going by the process. Think about it this way, when we talk about workforce management, we talk about scheduling or forecasting or labor planning. Most groups automatically think about JWs, apprentices, our field team members. Where are they going to be? They don't think about, wait a minute, I have an opportunity here to schedule or allocate my detailers or prefab time as well. Detailer A is going to be working towards this job from day A to day Z, and they have this much time because we determined this is the level of detail that we want on this job. This is how much time that person should put on here, and now we have a budget to hold on to. I think that's key, because if we don't have these tools, it's hard to look back and say, are we actually now adhering to this new process? Are we actually having the discipline, or are we saying it and then watching it burn out later on?
2-week look ahead is another great example. 2-week, 3-week, whatever you want to call it, whatever you do within your company. Who can argue that that's a bad idea? That's a good idea, right? We need to get our foreman looking ahead 2 to 3 weeks, planning out where he's taking this, communicating it back to the project manager, for the project manager to fully understand what to expect coming down the road, because he's in charge of doing the earned value analysis, right? 9 times out of 10, when I ask a contractor if they use 2-week look-aheads, they'll say, well, sometimes. No discipline. It's not tied to anything. No one's educated as to really how important this is, right? What's a 2-week look-ahead do standing alone? Nothing. You use that to augment other things within your company, other things you should be bringing discipline to, earned value analysis, labor planning, using the platform, using Rivet to do your labor plan. The earned value, or the 2-week look ahead, is like a sparkler. And if you don't tie it to other things, it is a standalone sparkler. And guess what happens to anything that stands alone? Here's what happens. You know, I have a lot of pencils that have
Broken pencil for effect.
Yeah, I have a lot of pencils without erasers on them for some reason. They're long and they're, but that's what happens. It snaps. It does you no good. You waste a bunch of time. Somebody made this pencil, for what? That's the point, is that when you hear discipline, that's what it means. Get your house in order. Enforce what you decide is a good idea. Don't light a sparkler.
Educate people how they are being part of the bigger picture. Because why would groups stop doing look-aheads? Well, I don't know what they're being used for. I don't see a return on my investment, so to speak. I don't see why and how it's being leveraged, so why would I keep doing it, or why would I put more effort into it? Fine, here's the same thing of last week, yada, yada. And
yeah.
It's so we talked a little bit about processes, how we define them, how we're trying to approach discipline here, how we just talked about some different workflows that maybe you wouldn't normally consider, but we started to hit on there a siloed or the individual approach, or having something stand alone versus having it being part of the bigger picture or part of the team. And that's where I think we go next is,
look what I have, Brian.
This, you got a lot of pencils ready to make a lot of points.
Well, here, before we go on, here's our workforce management tool, Rivet. Here's our 2-week look ahead. Here's our earned value. What else you want to throw in there?
Prefab planning. Prefab and detail planning.
Okay, let's start tying these together, right? I can throw 20 pencils out there. Mm-hmm. All right. When I put these in place and I tie them all together, I can't break this.
Yep.
Right? It's a pillar. It's strong. This is what we're talking about here. This is the importance of bringing all these processes together, tying them together, and making it something that cannot break, right? Because now one relies on the other. And the people on both sides, in back office, people out in the field, they understand the importance of each one, and how it contributes to the whole. Once we get there, we have something to build upon.
And what Gary's talking about here, we are talking about in this last episodes. We went into the depths of forecasting and scheduling and communications and information. That's just the bridge, the WFM bridge. We'll throw up another graphic for the reminder for those of you that haven't seen it. It's the same principle with the bridge itself, because that is directly in-house with the workforce management piece, but there are all these other workflows now that can be tied together through this workforce management practice. That's what this is the glue. This is the operational glue in the middle that helps us bind all of these other workflows together, and why so many groups that Gary and I have spoken with struggle with these things. You talk to everybody, prefab is great, labor planning is great, 2-week look aheads are great, we do it on the big jobs, why not on every job? Well, it's not sustainable, yada, yada, it doesn't really return, this and that. When we have a workforce management practice in the center, we can have visibility, we can have training, sustainable discipline, and all these things. That's a glue that pulls all these other pieces into the operational labor operations effectiveness.
It's the pizza analogy, right? Within our company, think of your company as a pizza. And 40% of what we do is labor management. Tell me a process in your company that isn't integrated with another process other than labor management if you do not have a platform, right? HR is tied to the ERP. ERP drives everything. Tool management is tied back in. There are these platforms for everything we do, estimating, safety, accounting, everything but workforce management, until Rivet or the workforce management platforms came along, right? And we do, and it's not integrated.
I want to talk though real quick, this pizza analogy. We've referenced this in the past, but something that we didn't bring up, and that's an interesting thought. If you're looking at the top of the pizza, if you have your circle, the 40% that Gary's referencing, everybody wants to think of it as a slice of the pizza, right? It's not. The labor operations piece is the 40% ring on the outside. It's the crust that holds all of it together. So really what we're talking about is not, 2 or 4 squares of the pizza. What we're really talking about is that outer ring, 40%, that is the crust, because without it, now everything seeps off as you're trying to bake it, and it all kind of spreads out across.
Or even if you want to think of it as a slice, think of it as a 40% slice.
40% slice.
And that's the one you don't have the crust under.
Yeah.
And it's out there. It's like,
but it's that ring on the outside that's holding everything else together.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to bind everything. When we're talking about these pencils, we're trying to hold all the toppings, all the profits. We're trying to hold it all in.
Regardless.
Yeah.
Right? It's a mess.
It's a mess.
Until you get crust under the entire pizza, you're not going to get very far. And your biggest expense is that 40% that really you need to consider, putting something in place that integrates with other processes within your company, other disciplines, and making your company whole.
Okay. I am very excited about this next section, this concept of a tale of two companies. I'll pass it to you to kind of phrase where this came from, how you came up with it, what the two companies are. But this is an awesome analogy and something that I actually associate with as well from some different military trainings over the years. This is a cool way of thinking about when we talk about having discipline and having everybody tied together, having the why, having people trained and educated together, and knowing the bigger picture versus individually trying to do their piece of the pie, or individually do their workflows. So tale of two companies.
Tale of two companies. So I have this company, and it's a well-oiled machine. I have brought discipline to my company. I have delineated responsibilities across the board. Every player knows their role. And most players know the roles of the other players and why they're doing what they're doing and what their role is as it contributes to the whole. So let's start from January 1, 2024, and we'll go through the fiscal year. We have 6 projects. They're going to start beginning of the year, and they're going to finish at the end of the year. Now, all 6 of these projects are different. They all have different schedules, but we know that we have to execute on all 6 of these projects and to be profitable. What do we do first? We have this team now. We have this behemoth team behind this initiative. We have the field guys. We have the field supervisors. We have the warehouse personnel. We have the prefab personnel. We have the detailers.
Operational leadership.
Operational leadership. We have accounting. We have timekeeping. You know, name it. Mm-hmm. I don't have to go through them all. But the point is, there's a lot of things going on here. Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to plan. Right? So how are we going to do that? Well, let's have a meeting, figure out what we're going to do. Let's set the level of detail. Let's approach this in the right manner, right? And let's get a good, solid plan down for all 6 of these projects. Not 5 of them, not 4 of them, because they're the big major ones. Let's do it on all 6. We're doing it anyway. Let's really do a good job here, right? So now we get out there, and the first guys we're going to send out are the detailers. They're the forward observers. They're the scouts. And they're going to figure out what's going to happen down the road, right? They're gonna. You know what? There's 2 river crossings.
So this tale of 2 companies. I want you to imagine Gary laid out. We've got 6 projects. We're going through the fiscal year 2024, or whatever it might be, right? Imagine the way I like to imagine this while he's describing it is you have 2 teams that are starting at a start line, and they're going to traverse through a forest, miles and miles and miles through this forest, and they're going to get to a destination on the other side. Right, so I have a start and finish, and through the middle is unknown terrain. There's mountains, hills, rivers, valleys, forests, yada, yada. These 2 organizations need to go from A to B, and both of them are racing forward.
Right, but it's not unknown to one team, right? The terrain has been researched, studied, and we have prepared for what we're going to encounter as Team A moves through this project.
We forecasted and planned.
Right. We forecasted, we planned. We know what the detailers are going to do. And Team A takes off and starts blazing this trail through this woods, as you described, right? Well, when we get to that first river crossing, what happens? The projects are going to get there at different times, right? We're going to get whatever project gets there first. You know what? We need that workforce management bridge up here. And we need 2 sections of it because it's quite wide. And the prefab department has already built it. And they roll it up into place, and we don't miss a beat. And now we know that project 2 on Team A is right behind it. We've got the bridge up here already. Let's just slide it over there. And we get everybody across the bridge. It's well coordinated. It's communicated to one another. We have a single source of truth. Everyone's looking at the same thing across the board, right? And we are highly efficient. The supervisors know where the other teams are at, right?
I want to, so let's do it left and right. Like we're watching, we'll throw a graphic up here. We're watching these 2 teams race through the forest, right? Team A, what Gary's talking about, they're going a little slower, but they are actually clearing the forest, potentially paving a road, basically, getting to the first river crossing, and they have now come up, dropped these bridge sections in place, and they're across the first river crossing, right? They're across the first job, whatever you want to call it. In the meantime, we need a reference. In the meantime, Team B or Organization B, this Team B, this is an organization that has a bunch of individuals. And this is individuals that it's not their fault. They don't know how they're contributing to the larger picture, so they're off trying to do their piece of the pie as best they think they could in their own way. And in the beginning, they're moving faster because they didn't stop and plan and yada, yada. So they're out there going. They seem to be moving faster, but then they start to reach that first river crossing.
Well, they're independent. Mm-hmm. They're totally independent of one another. There's I just want to finish with Team A first. I think you get the point that a highly coordinated effort, well communicated, nothing's going to get in our way, right? We've got it figured out, and it's because of the fundamentals. It's not anything other than that. You hear coaches in athletics talk about fundamentals, then it will all come together. Well, if you don't do the fundamentals, then you're not going to get anywhere. Now, Team B, to your point, I've got 6 foremen. I have call it six project managers. Maybe I have 4 project managers. And we're going to set out. Bill knows what he's doing. He's the foreman. Stan knows what he's doing. They've done this for years. Let's trust them. Let's hire some smart people. Okay? Let's hire some smart people and just turn them loose and they'll figure it out. You've heard that. Mm-hmm. I've heard that. Right? Okay. Now we have really smart people. We were successful. We hired smart people.
By the way, they are smart people. We've heard, and they're extremely capable. And then we screw it up because we then use it as a scapegoat. It's a cop-out when we say we hired smart people. Now we'll let them figure it out versus actually leading and saying, this is how we believe we're going to do better. Now help us improve this. Help us evolve this versus, my leadership style is let them go. They'll figure it out.
Well, okay, so who's hiring the smart people? Who hires the smart people? Must be some guy that's smarter, right? Because he can figure out who the smart people are. I will submit he might be the dumbest guy in the company hiring the smart people. Because if you think that can really happen, can work, any company with any size, you better reevaluate where you're going here, because smart people working independently, what are they going to do? They're going to take care of number one first.
And they have to.
Because they're smart.
And they have to.
They have to survive, right?
And I can
they're trying to survive within an environment isn't really conducive to the team's effort.
And think this forest analogy really is spot on. I've been there. Right? I've been there when at night you are traversing landscape and it's just you, and you naturally, the first thing you go to is like, oh my gosh, I got to check my 6. I got to be looking around, because now you don't have a team with you. It's just you. And now you get this survivability aspect coming in on you, and you find yourself looking around more and trying to check behind you and make sure you're okay, versus getting to look up and ahead, getting to look down at your map and your compass, getting to anticipate and proactively plan ahead. And when you have a team with you and you know that your 6 is secure, you've got people on your left and your right, you've got some strength in numbers, now all of a sudden you could be in the exact same scenario, wee hours of the morning, pitch black, night vision, going through the mountains, but you're anticipating, you're looking ahead, and you're planning for the next route, versus when you're by yourself.
And your supply lines are there.
And you know that you're going to get food and water the next day and ammo, versus when it's just you do. It's the natural thing. It's inevitable. You have to start being concerned with what's going around what is going on around me, and how am I going to make it? And it's a very different mentality, a different effect.
Yeah, the first smart guy, the first foreman, gets to the river crossing when he's working independently, right?
Which, by the way, Team A went on a straight line, and they all went together. May have taken them longer. Team B went out 5 or 6 different teams, all went in their own ways, kind of squirreling out. But eventually, the first one, the fastest one, the best one, hit the river.
It's the tortoise and the hare thing. Mm-hmm. They're not going faster. They appear to be,
but they're
going
serpentine.
Slower. They're really going slower.
Yeah,
and they're highly inefficient. So now I get to the river crossing. I don't have a bridge. I'm leading this team. Geez, I don't know how to get across this thing. You know what I better do? I better call up the general superintendent and have him come out here and help me figure this out. So he does. He shows up, and together they figure out a way to get across. Right? And they have to work at it for a while, because they really don't have the best solution.
But they build what I call a one-rope bridge. And for those of you that don't know, this is one guy has to get wet. One guy is going to go out in front, swim across the river, carry the rope with him, tie it on the other side. And you can traverse the river with this, with minimum people. But it is not going to get the rest of the team. You can get some of the team across, but it's not going to be able to move any major element across. So these guys cross it. But it's a very rickety bridge. It's a very...
Well, it's hard to get equipment across that bridge, too.
Yeah.
But, so now we get them across the bridge. It isn't long, the next team's going to show up at that river crossing, and he's not going to be in the same spot. He can be 2 miles to the north, right? Mm-hmm. Well, guess who shows up? The general superintendent. Well, right now he's helping the second team get across the river. He's got this figured out better than he did the first time, right? Well, the third team is there as well, but they're also 2 miles to the north, because they're not on the same path. They're just doing their thing, right? Well, I'm sorry, I can't make it. I'm busy with this team. Mm-hmm. When I get time, I'll be there. In the meantime, try to figure it out. Well, either they do or they don't, right? He either gets across on his own or he doesn't.
Washed away and we lose profits.
Now, what happens when Team A, the highly efficient team, gets attacked by wild animals, say? Well, they're all in a group, right? They know that danger exists, and they have plans in place to extinguish that threat before or immediately when it happens. What happens when the other team gets attacked?
Material shortages, changes in workforce,
Whatever
right?
it might
Like
be.
you name it. We all know Murphy's Law, shit's going to hit the fan. And so one of the things I want to note too, when we're talking about these funny analogies, I want to tie some of it back to what we hear and what I know some of our listeners have dealt with. When we talk about the tortoise and the hare, when we talk about Team A slowly clearing a path, paving a road, and bringing the bridge up, yada, yada, and they're moving slower in the beginning maybe than Team B, who sets out and goes, one of the fundamental ways you can think about that, the real difference, hey, why don't you guys labor plan every job? That takes too much time. We don't have time to deal with that. That's too many clicks. That takes too much time. It's not going to be right down the road. Yada yada.
Things are going to change.
Things are going to change anyways. Why would we even plan it?
It's going to take what it takes.
You cannot believe how many groups say all these things, and then all their problems arise because they don't want to take the moment to just add a little bit extra information, add a little bit of plan or detail.
It's the perception of speed.
Yeah, because they don't know why.
It's not the time. The highly efficient team gets things done more efficiently, more effectively, and more profitably.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They appear to be methodical. They appear to be moving slow. It appears as though we're burning a bunch of money up front. Right? But you got to get beyond that, because what they're doing is they're setting the stage for the installation to happen in a very efficient manner. The cost of rework, it can be argued that the cost of rework on a project is 5 times the initial install. What do you think those 6 teams out meandering through the woods have to backtrack, go a different direction, do something different? Every time they do that, it's 5 times the expense. When you plan things out properly and prepare yourself for these things that are supposedly uncontrollable. Well, you can't control the weather. I get that.
Yeah.
All right? But you are, when you put yourself into control of the processes and the situation, more so than just winging it, you're much, much better off.
And what we're talking about here is even the rework lever. Even without pulling the rework lever, so to speak, talk about just knowing when people should leave the job, having the exit strategy meeting and adhering to the plan and driving people off the job rather than waiting, right? Scheduling people to the true length of the assignment, not just, hey, we send them there. Well, how long are they supposed to be there? They'll be there till they go somewhere else. Taking the time to actually say they're going to go on day A and they're going to leave on D-Day. Okay, fine. And then where are they going to go next? And taking the time to actually do that versus, I don't have time to do that. I'll call the admin back in the office and they'll shuffle people around, yada, yada. No, stop and actually plan this out. And yes, you're right. They're not actually going slower. They're just moving in a more direct path and they're gaining ground faster. But when they get to that project, when they get to the river crossing, they knock it out of the park because they're ready for it versus the group that kind of takes a beating and works their way through the river crossing. They come out bloody and wet on the other side, but they got through it. Yeah, great.
Well, here's 6 projects.
And that's the first of 6. And this is just going to be a more and more rough time. And here's the best part. Gary's analogy about this training and discipline and how it changes the organization. Got Team A and Team B, right? And they're moving through these forests, this terrain. They get to the first river crossing. We get past it. Okay, well, then by the next river crossing, we get a little bit better, right? Okay, well, that's nice. Third one, well, we really got this down, yada, yada. But all the while, remember, this is the annual year, all right? This is the fiscal year. This is the 6th project. This is the start to the finish line. And all the while, Team A has been training and has been identifying workflows and is teaching and educating, and they have the why down, and they have been paving a road with these bridges they're dropping in place. So when we do get to the end, Team A has a path for the rest of the people to follow the next time.
Well, they have the right tools. have the proper equipment and working order, and
They have a
supply
sustainable.
lines. It's sustainable, and so now we get to the next fiscal year. We're there. All we have to do is repeat.
Mm-hmm.
The 6 teams out meandering around in the woods, 4 of the 6 get there. Well, the other 2 are they're behind. Now we have fewer people for the next 6 projects. We've just created our own labor shortage, right? That's terrible.
Yep.
When that happens, that is an event that happens to a lot of contractors. They don't even realize why. Well, we'll just hire. Construction's hard, right? Construction's hard.
Construction's hard.
So here's these 6 independent projects. I'm not going to break 6 pencils, but I think the point is you can, right? But here's the team A. They're solid. You're not going to break them, and they're just going to consistently roll through these projects, and bring some rhyme or reason to the chaos that takes place in construction.
And it really, it's when we get to the end, when we get to the destination at the end of the year, past the 6 projects, past the 6 river crossings, Team A can actually look back and see, I'm looking down that road and it looks pretty damn straight, but we kind of curved here and there. They have something to look back on and improve upon and evolve their processes for the next length of forest, for the next 6 jobs. Versus when Team B gets there, they got there. That's awesome.
Well,
but they can't look back. They look back and all they see is forest and woods, and they go, how exactly did we get here? How do we make it better the next time? And by the time they get to the first river crossing, they're back at square one again.
You just reminded me of something. So all the time this other team's out meandering around in the woods, right? And there's a leader. There's a guy in charge of all 6 teams, labor manager. He's bouncing between these projects the best he can. He's moving people between projects where they're needed. Most likely playing musical chairs that we alluded to in previous episodes. The job goes to hell in a handbasket. We lose. Margin fade kicks in. Now we need more people. We got to get to the front lines, and there's no real rhyme or reason as to why.
Hey, wait, real quick. I've got Sean calling me. We should have him. I wonder if he could pick up. This would be great. Hey, Sean. Yeah. We're filming a podcast right now. If we put him on, so we're in the middle of this. We're talking just real quick. Humor me. This is not scripted, people. All right, discipline. We're talking about discipline and how workforce management helps bring discipline to operations, right? Yep. Anything? Let's do a test real quick. Can you hear Sean? Go ahead and talk, Sean.
How does discipline bring to the workforce development?
How does a workforce management platform help bring discipline to labor operations and the project teams executing?
It puts a structure in place along with accountability that can align your workforce with not only what they're performing in the field, but align your project managers and the financials of the project to determine where the project sits early on and sets it up for success. Gives you the ability to see any early warning signs that something's going awry. Developing this discipline determines a better outcome on 98% of your projects.
Yeah, that's all right. You nailed
Thanks,
it. Thanks,
Sean.
Thanks, Sean. We can wrap this session. Hey, man.
Right from out of the blue from a contractor.
Out of the blue. That's straight from the horse's mouth.
That's awesome.
Dude, we really are. We're on live right now, so I might have to let you go, brother. But I appreciate it, man. Hey, I'll give you a call later today. How about midday? Can I catch you again?
Yep, that sounds good.
Thanks, brother. See ya.
Thanks, bud.
Perfect.
Sorry, that's too good to pass up.
Well, there you go. I mean, and Sean's one of our best clients, and he gets it.
He gets it.
And obviously, you can see that he has adopted a lot of these things and put them into place, and it's been very beneficial to his company.
And his whole company is on board too. Sean is awesome, but his whole organization, by the way, just kind of as we summarize or start to wrap this analogy up, the tale of 2 companies. Sean and their company, your organization, some of the best companies we have worked with and been able to help, and they have taught us as well, is At the very beginning, they have that annual forecast. They take the time to plan out what are the commitments or the identified needs on current and future jobs. They take the time to plan their people across those jobs for the specific durations that make the most sense. They communicate these things across their teams. They're developing their people intentionally, their roster, through their experiences, through the assignments. They are developing certs and trainings, making sure people are ready for the river crossings.
They're educated.
They're educating.
And they've created a tremendous amount of depth within their company because they've educated so many people. They're not reliant on just one or two individuals that have the market cornered on the brains, right? I mean, it's very deep, well-supported company.
And I want to talk about one other thing there on the market piece. This is something that I really do enjoy, and you've seen this firsthand. I know a number of customers and contractors that have done the same thing. When you get this stuff in place, when you get this business practice in place, and you take the time to sustainably train, create that discipline, there's a lot of people that go, I mean, this looks great, but I don't think we'd ever get there. I don't think we'd ever get there. You know what? If you're not willing to try to get there, you probably aren't. But if you go into it thinking with the mentality, genuinely, if you go into it thinking, here's a tool, that's what's been missing. That's why you don't feel like you can get there. That's why most groups truly don't believe they could get there, because what have you had to work with? What has been there to help take you from A to B? What vehicle have you been dealing with? You've been dealing with a bicycle with one wheel, right? That's hard to ride. But when you have a vehicle, a 4x4 now, a workforce management tool that's built to do these things, now I got an off-road all-terrain vehicle, and that can help me get there. But these groups that do figure it out, they're playing with the competition in their market. They pick which jobs they're going to win. They go out, take them, and they go make their money. It is a different, these companies are operating a different way.
I spent my career trying to get to the point where I didn't have to do anything.
Aren't we all?
Right? And so that involved a lot of education, a lot of training, a lot of self-reflection. What truly is the problem here? And one principle that guided me was, if I had a problem that would repeat itself more than once, maybe twice, kind of let it slide. But it happened the third time, I would drop everything and laser beam focus on that problem and put it to bed forever. And if you start doing that, everything starts building on it, right? And you start building a company that starts running a lot better because you're picking off these little nagging problems that actually fester into chronic diseases at times, right? You nip it at the bud. You make sure that if you understand this, you want at least 3 or 4 other people to understand it, right? You want to get people and trust it and give them the authority and the responsibilities to take care of things for you.
You mentioned the little nagging things, the little nagging problems, and how it's counterintuitive. I know there are people watching going, yeah, I wish I could drop everything and just address them, right? Here's what happens. A good friend of ours, Dustin, he's got a great analogy where you're driving down this highway, you're going on a cross-country road trip, and these little nagging problems, these little inefficiencies, stuff like that. We're doing okay today. We hear this all the time. Well, we're doing okay today. We're not sure if we really need this. We're not sure if we really need to invest in this. We're not sure if we really need to change. We're doing okay. His analogy is, if you're doing okay and you have these little nagging problems, those are like little nails in the wheels. It's not deflating as you speak, but they're slowly leaking. But imagine as you keep going down that road, it starts off by just a quick tire patch. A quick tire patch would have fixed it. But you pick up another nail here and there in a different wheel, and you just keep going. You're like, we're fine. We'll deal with this later. Well, what you're basically saying is now later is, I've got 3 flat tires that have been riding on the rims, and I now need new wheels, not just new tires. And I'm basically, it drags you down.
I'll tell you what, it takes time to change a tire or patch a tire, right? Don't have time for that. We got to keep going. Yeah. Yep.
Turns out we do. We've talked as we're wrapping this up, and I appreciate everybody's patience because this is another one of those kind of, from our very first episodes you all saw, these are big, hairy, strange, gray edge topics. They're not clean cut and defined, but I hope that today we were able to help convey how our processes are really how it all starts. And those processes are linked to culture. Do we have a culture that really wants to see these processes because they recognize if I really address and I get a grip or a visibility and awareness on my processes, and again, think when we say that, just visualize how in detailed and in depth we're talking about, but it starts with my processes. If I get a tool or a platform or something to help aid, support, or enforce these processes or visualize these processes, then it allows us to conduct sustainable training to educate. And that's where we really get this team approach. We get a solid core, and we're able to actually cut through the forest rather than wander.
That is a very valid point. Sustainable training. You know, how many times you hear at peer group meetings or, you know, from consultants, you need to train, you need to train, you need to train. I don't know how many times through the course of my career that we had an employee come over from another contractor and come over with their training manual. Oh boy, look at here what we got. We're looking behind the scenes. Never put any of them to any use at all because they didn't apply to our company. They didn't fit our culture. Really, they're just kind of worthless, right? Now, training is the one thing that I'll freely admit I put off for quite a long time because I felt as though we're going to waste a bunch of time here. We're going to waste a bunch of money, and we're not going to get very far with this. And the reason is because we didn't have our processes in place. We had nothing to really train on. We could train. We couldn't educate, right? But when these processes started to come in place and the workforce management tool came into play, it created a foundation. And it created a situation like this, right? And with that situation now, we don't have sparklers. We don't have individual sparklers spread out a foot apart. We light this one, get down to the other end, and this one's gone out, and we're chasing our tail back and forth trying to keep them all going. We've got them all tied together now, and this is more like an internal flame, right? And we just keep adding sparklers to it. We just keep making it better and better and better.
And the flame gets brighter and brighter.
Now we can not only, you can call it training, because you do train on certain things, but now we can educate our people into what this is.
And that education is culture. That's where our culture can come from too.
And it's collaboration. And that's the powerful thing. When this project manager starts collaborating with the prefab team and the design team and the field and management, accounting, they all start collaborating. And they're all going on team A in the same direction. You can't break this. Mm-hmm. You can't separate it. This one is dependent on this one, right? And you start educating people on that, you are never going to stop that process because it's critical to basically put the cherry on top of the shake.
We don't have the silver bullet. We're not saying this is easy. This doesn't happen overnight. You just heard from Sean on the phone there, Gary. These things, we always talk, it's a journey. It is a journey. These things take time. Toby, our good friend, his article that we were working with him on, these things take time, and it is not weeks, right? It is months. No. These culture things take years, Gary, arguably maybe even decades to get some of these true core culture pieces together. But you can pick off little ones and start. You can start laying the foundation.
You'll see immediate improvement. Mm-hmm. When you start, you see immediate improvement. And then what ends up happening is your workforce starts catching on. Your project managers start catching on. They help you now in the process, right? They're bringing ideas. This guy's listening to me. I want to be a part of this, right? I want to educate my coworkers and what I am discovering, right? And you reach this critical mass at some point, it kind of starts taking care of itself, you know, in everything you do as a company. You know, as far as, you know, the quality of the people that worked in the field, I never really had to worry about that too much because the masses flushed out the bad apples. I didn't have to. The masses would. They were all on the same page. That guy's got to go. It's not
a team player.
No. He's independent of what we're trying to accomplish here, and they could hang in there for a while. And either they adopted the culture and they figured out, wait a minute,
this makes
I better
everybody
change my ways, or they don't, and then they either end up leaving on their own accord or they end up getting fired, one of the two.
It's this. Start with the 6 workforce management categories. Start with the ones we've been talking about in these series. Try to get some discipline there. And there's a tool out there. We prefer Rivet, but get a workforce management tool that can help in that area. You start discipline in those 6 workforce management categories in the forecast, roster, schedule, communications, information, productivity. Start there, and then you'll find pretty soon there are these other workflows, other processes in your business that can start to tie in and can start to get added to that sparkler bomb now, or that eternal flame. Your detailers, your earned value analysis, your exit strategy, your planning. We can bring visibility, a team approach, alignment, and discipline to these areas, and I hope that we helped just convey a little bit of use cases and experiences, just different people's experiences trying to go through this. And again, we hope it works. If you want to join this conversation, seriously, reach out to Gary and I. Go to www.rivet.work, W-O-R-K. Again, www.rivet.work. You can go there and find different information on workforce management platforms, some of Gary and I's different talks and such like that. Reach out to us. Give us a shout, and we hope to hear from you soon. In the meantime, we are coming into the close of the year. We're coming into the close of our first season of the Construction is Hard podcast. We've got a couple more episodes that'll probably be coming out. And then we'll be starting season 2, actually. In the meantime, think about this. You're going into the new year. You're starting that new race. You're getting ready to go off into the forest. And we'd love to work with you and start making a plan and help with this.
Are you Team A or Team B?
Are you going to be Team A or are you going to be Team B? So for now, I'm Brian. That's Gary. Construction is hard,
but it doesn't have to be.
Thank you. We are here to talk about workforce management. Why is it so inconsistent?
Construction's hard.